What? I guess it's working. If everybody'd like to take their seats, we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you for being here. Welcome. Thank you all for being here. I'm sure we'll have some others that may show up a little bit later, but we'll go ahead and get started since it's 2. I'd like to share with you today Kara Jackson. She is my son Don's girlfriend, and she agreed to play her beautiful music for us today. So we'll get started with one of her numbers. Thank you, Kara. For those of you who might not remember what I look like or who I am, I'm Belinda, I'm Roger's daughter. I really want to thank everyone for being here today. It means a lot to our family and would mean a lot to my dad too. I also want to thank Don, my son Don, who helped me to arrange and design the program for today. And a special thanks to the Moose's Lodge for helping us with this program today. They did all the decorations, prepared all the food, and thank you, Liana, for putting us in touch with the Moose's to do this, and Sandy for your help as well. Very much appreciated. There's been a change in our program today. Unfortunately, the Blackfeet Indians weren't able to make it because they had a family emergency. But our thoughts and our prayers are with them, whatever they are facing. We are sending lots of warm wishes to them. So we have lots of other things to share today. Feel free to applaud, laugh, cry. This is a celebration of life. I'm a little bit nervous up here. I may make a few mistakes, but bear with me. You might have noticed that on the front of the program is a carnation. Carnations were my dad's favorite flower. I decided to look up the meaning of carnations because of that. I found they mean fascination, distinction, and love. My father certainly had a fascination for many things. He liked bright, shiny objects and toys. And he enjoyed people immensely. He also had a flair for distinction and liked uniqueness and to be able to stand out. But the best thing is he truly loved his family and being a Blades. He always talked with great fondness of his brothers and sisters and the fun they always had growing up. He loved his childhood and many nieces and nephews, and many of them were near his age growing up. He adored the ever-growing Blades family and the lifelong friendships he found growing up and as an adult. And we loved him so much as our father and grandfather. According to a Christian legend, carnations grew from the Virgin Mary's tears as she watched Jesus carry the cross. This is how carnations became associated with motherly love. Dad spoke often of his mother, Maud. He talked about how loving she was, and despite not having much for herself, she gave everything she could to her children during hard economic times. She passed when he was just a young boy, but he held her memory dear and shared her spirit with others. I've also found other symbols of the carnation. In the Netherlands, white carnations are worn to remember veterans. In the United States, we also honor our veterans. I'm so proud of my father's service to our country in the Navy and during the Korean War, and serving in the Korean War at the very young age of 17. He related many funny stories about the Navy days, but also learned to be on his own and to become a man. Finally, in some countries, red carnations are worn on May Day to symbolize the labor movement. My dad believed in working men and women and giving them a decent wage for the good life for themselves and their families in the United States. His career was dedicated to this, and he helped to achieve this for many labor workers. I believe carnations are a fitting flower to honor my dad. Also, I love how they smell, reminding me how good my dad always smelled when I was a little girl and I snuggled up on his lap and smelled his Old Spice cologne. In honor of my dad, I'd like to recite the 23rd Psalm. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He lead me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of our life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Thank you.
Thanks, Linda, that was great. Hi, everybody, I'm Mitch Blades, if we all didn't know. So, gotta have these now. Gotta love it, right? On August 24th, at 4:40 p.m., my dad died. Anyway, yeah, I got it. Sorry about that. Luckily, my sister and I were both there to support him. Okay, I'm all right now. He was the last of a big, broad family. And as I look at all my cousins, I can't imagine how Grandma and Grandma would be so proud and how successful everybody was. But let's go back a little bit. The oldest Blades was born in 1908. His name was Robert. He died at a very young age in 1909. And Dad was the very last born of a big, proud family. Now, I put Robert in there, his dad always did. There, 12 of them, made it through life. But Dad always remembered Robert. And I wanted to include him in that. Grandma and Grandpa were very poor. Never owned a car. Matter of fact, some of the sisters helped drive the covered wagon. The church had almost covered a wagon over from eastern Montana. Dad was born at home, and I think probably LV, I'm not sure. They had nothing. They just were born poor and lived life as it was. Dad didn't know he was poor because everybody else was. He had stuff at home, he was okay. They ended up growing up in Mosquito Flats, which is kind of ironic because I got to live down there too as a young man, a young kid, I should say. He would swim in a slough and he would slide down the hill, and all the brothers would put a bonfire up in the middle of the hill, and they'd slide down and run through the night. And he said that wintertime they would go out and play ice hockey on the slough, which is kind of funny. I think Kurt and I, we all went out and did all that. We did the sliding down the hill. It's like I just did the same things my dad did growing up. Dad didn't have pets. He said he caught a turtle once and had it as a pet. He said, well, we did have cows and pigs, but those weren't pets. So, that's how it was. Dad said when he was young, he didn't know sleeping before the bed wasn't normal. Later on it moved down to just 2, which was pretty cool, because it was just him and Elvie. But, Dad's breakfast was his favorite meal was pancakes. And even when he lived with me, he's like, oh man, pancakes, I want to eat them pancakes. Well, that comes from when he was a child. He'd wake up to hearing Grandma mix pancakes in a wooden spoon in a bowl in the warm fire, and he'd come out and he was, man, he loved eating Grandma's pancakes. It's kind of funny how that followed him through life. I think that always reminded him of his mom, growing up at his early age. So they didn't have a whole lot of possessions. Grandpa, they all kind of had to hunt. They'd hunt year-round because they had to put food on the table. Grandpa had a 1898 model Springfield 3040 Craig that he had taken off the front sights, and for some reason, I'm not sure, put a buffalo head nickel in the front sights. Well, that gun, all the brothers, I think, hunted with it. I think Joe, your dad, did. I think all the brothers did, and as each brother died, they passed it down, which I have right here. So anybody wants to look at it after I'm done, be more proud to come take a look at it, talk to me about it. I've got it at the moment, but it's got to stay in the Blades name, so I'm going to definitely pass it down to, if you're interested, let me know. Because it's got to stay in the family. But it's even got some marking for somebody was marking what they got. I'm hoping it was deer. But if we were Blades, you never know. It's the only position I know of that was Grandpa and Grandma's that I've ever seen. So, if anybody wants to come, I can stay up and look at it if we're done here today. Feel free to. Grandma and Grandpa died, like I say, Dad's young age. Grandma was 10 when she died, and he was 12 when Grandpa died. It was just him and Elvie and Grandpa living in a one-room shack down in the flats. He died middle of the night, had a heart attack. After he died, Elvie and Dad lived with Andy and Joe and them down there for a while, and they ended up Dad ended up at Bees and Bucks, and he felt like, I ended up being his mom growing up as Buck and Bee, and they remained very close up to the very end. We all enjoyed having Buck and Bee over playing a little progressive rummy, having talked on both sides of you. Different story. But yeah, very, very memorable. Dad, he never had nothing. So, he said the first time he ever saw TV, he was in basic training in San Diego, and he walked by and looked in the store, and there was a fight on. And him and his buddies had to stay there and watch the fight because they'd never even seen anything like this TV thing. In the Navy days, Dad, like I said, he was a young man, so he was kind of had that Blades hellion in him a little bit. One time they come to port in San Diego, and a bunch of his buddies decided to go to San Francisco. They went clear to Tijuana. Well, they got done, and Dad said he was still having fun. He wanted to wait another day. Well, when he got back to where they put their clothes in the locker, everything was stolen, so he had to hitchhike back. And of course, the ship was gone. And, well, went on AWOL there. He said the next time he went on AWOL, he said they ported at San Diego. He said, well, hell, I've already been here. So he went to Columbia Falls. And I got in trouble again. Then he ended up he did spend some time in Korea War at the end, and spent a little bit of time in Japan, and he put in for shore duty, and they put him in Guam, and he was there for 22 months, and he got there, and his first job was building crates for officers, they were shipping back home. They gave him a bottle or whatever, and so he did this, and he didn't really enjoy that all that much, and so his officer took him to Blades, I got a job for you. And he said, all right. And he took him across and says, you're going to have to stay out there where it's at. I said, okay. And walked in the generator room. And he goes, well, what do I do? He goes, well, at 5 in the morning, you get up and flip that switch. He says, oh, well then what? He goes, well, you got to flip it off at 5 at night. He says, that's it? He goes, pretty much. And he goes, well, don't worry, you're not the only one. There's going to be 2 of you. You got every day off. So basically, that's what he did for 22 months. He'd flip that switch on in the morning and flip it off at night. And they had a Jeep and they'd go to town. And he said, yeah, heck, but he just loved it down there. Dad had a way of finding good ways out of things that way. Sorry, I got a break. I'm getting ahead and telling a story without reading it. So. Growing up Blades in the 60s, boy, I was proud to be at Blades. On the weekends, I'd have Don and Jerry and Bill, and there'd always be a group of people in our house over teens. And I thought, man, that's the way it was, and it was just the laughter was unbelievable. The boys, they would be all standing around telling jokes. And whoever was telling the joke, halfway through they'd be laughing. And you'd have to laugh. I was a kid, I didn't understand the joke, but I'd be laughing just because they were laughing so dang hard, you know, and it was, you could hear it probably down at Teen's house or vice versa, you know, it was just something to be enjoyed, you know, and just growing up down there is just, you know, it was one of my fondest memories of growing up, was all the laughter in our house, and it was just either Teens at breakfast and with the Gimbles and, you know, all those families, and then the Blazes over at ours, and it was just amazing. And I was really happy to be there. Now, Dad, in his early days, was an operator. He loved running equipment. Bill showed him how to run a scraper, I believe, and back then days, them scrapers didn't have a cab, you know, they just had the open cab and they'd drive them scrapers. Well, he was on a job and it was raining and lightning, and, you know, there's no stopping back then, and he got hit by lightning. And luckily, it was a big rubber-tired scraper. It threw him off about 100 feet, and he got up, and like most of us, like, okay, I'm calling that a day. You know, he went back to work. Yeah, finished doing his job, but that's kind of how it was. Dad wasn't real handy. Loved him to death, but he wasn't mechanical. He said Les, Greg, and him one time rebuilt the motor in Mom's Henry J, and it never ran again. That was his last foray at mechanics. The other time, we were painting a house, and Jim Everson, you know, he had a paint sprayer and he painted houses, and he came over, and Dad comes out there, and I'm in the yard watching this. I'm pretty young, and Dad says, "Hey, Jim, is there anything I can do?" Jim's on a ladder painting a house. And Jim, "No." He says, "You sure there's anything I can do?" Well, there's one thing. He said, "Well, what?" "Get off my hose." Dad went from being an operator to being elected as business manager for Local 370, which is now Local 400, when he was, I believe, 32 years old. One of the youngest ever to be elected to that position. And he wore that proudly, you know. He enjoyed doing the negotiation. Dad was a people person. He had that ability to talk and, you know, gather in people into the conversation and, you know, make that happen. He was in that election term for 2 terms. Election was, I think, a total of 4 years. And he was offered a job for the International. So, being international, we couldn't live in Montana. We had to move. We had our choice of Boise or Sacramento. We ended up in Boise, and Lynn is still there. So we moved to Boise so Dad could work in Wyoming. So he was gone a lot, because he'd drive. He bought a brand new Buick Sabre, and he drove that back and forth to Wyoming back in those days. He was organizing Rock Springs, which, any of y'all know that was probably real safe and real fun, but he did it. And I think at the end of the year, he had like 130,000 miles on his car. Well, back then, that's pretty much wore out. So, you know, he got at that point, then the union started buying him cars. He never had to buy another car again. Thank goodness, because he didn't know how to work on them. And he couldn't get no money for that car because it had so many miles on it. It was kind of worthless after a year. Well, I helped him out. I'd taken Linda to work one day, and somebody hit me, and we totaled it. So he got the insurance money, made more than it was worth. I told him, "You're welcome." He didn't think that was too funny. But he did end up going down to Sacramento for a while. He moved back to Boise. Well, he moved back to West Glacier in 1980 when I graduated. So, all right, son, here's the rent. Bye. So, okay, Dad. And they come and built their house in West Glacier. And then Dad spent some time in San Francisco. That's where Lee's at. I always told people, I said, well, us 3 kids weren't allowed to live in the same state. So that's where it all ended up. I come back to Montana and stayed here, made it my home throughout the years with my wife Sandy. They ended up moving back to Montana. Dad retired. Yep, 6 months later they're divorced. So I mean, that was a tough goal, but Dad ended up moving to Twin Falls. And ended up remarrying down there. And he found God and a lot down there. And he became an elder in his church and all that. And I said, Dad, man, you really are religious now. I said, it's a lot different. He goes, well, son, I've got a lot to be forgiven for. I said, I get it then. Dad had a bad ankle, and he had to have it replaced. So in the wisdom of after having his ankle replaced, he thought it'd be a good idea to go to Tibet. And I said, Dad, you sure you can go hike the mountains in Tibet? He said, oh yeah, that's gonna be fine. I said, I'm just gonna practice going up and down the canyon in Twin Falls and it'll be all good. And he went off with him and a doctor and a couple ministers, and they went and hiked that Himalaya Trail up to 15,000 feet and to one of the highest monasteries or whatever up there, and hiked around, and it was one of the highlights of his life. And when he got back, yep, the ankle was ruined. He walked over it, and they had to cut his heel off and put screws in and refix it. And after that, he could never feel his foot again. It was a club. And I said, well, Dad, how's that? He goes, totally worth it. He said, I got to see something I thought I'd never see. I said, all right, Dad, that's cool. After his wife died, he did end up moving back to Montana, where his home is, and moved. He sold. He had some. Now, I don't know if you all know this. Dad liked to buy stuff, which was all good because he was happy and he would spend what he made, and he had some nice stuff. And as he got older, he goes, "Well, crap! I never thought I'd make it past when the money run out." But he ended up selling everything. He got frugal and lived in an apartment. And after a while, he become ill, and he'd fallen a couple times. And through Don Gibble helping and myself, and he ended up moving in with me the last couple of years of his life, which was made me a better man. You learn a lot about yourself. Now, Alzheimer's is a strange disease. It wasn't always all bad. I mean, he would tell stories like, he got to watch, I don't know if you all know this, I like cars. I've always liked cars. I'm going to probably die, with owning cars, and my poor wife's going to have to figure out what to do with them all. So I'd watch NASCAR and things, and we were sitting there watching NASCAR, and he was getting into the race, and he got rooting for the same guys that I rooted for, and he said, he looked at me, deadpans to me, he says, my son's in this race. I go, he is? And he said, yeah, he's doing good too. And I said, well, good for him. I said, which son is in your race? He goes, my son Mitch. I said, well, really good for him. And there was a lot of stories like that. And he got up one night, and I ended up having to put an alarm on his bed because he was a fall risk. And he'd get up 4 or 5 times a night, and for different reasons. Sometimes it's just to go to the bathroom and needed help. I was worried about him falling. Sometimes it's he'd get out of bed and he said, we got to get going. Well, where are we going? So we got to go get that guy off that machine. He's not supposed to be on that machine. I said, well, Dad, I said, you're not the union guy no more. He goes, well, hell, I ain't. I said, we got to go get that. I said, Dad, you retired 30 years ago. Well, nobody hell told me. I said, well, that's all right, Dad. I said, I called the guy, and he's going to take care of it. So, are you sure? And I said, yeah. So this was our nightly ritual. And he'd always have something to come up with or get up, and I'd have to go in and bring him back down to stay in bed, And only once I had to leave work early. My wife worked early, and we had a caregiver. The VA helped us out to have caregivers come from 6:30 to 8 when my wife got home. And Trina, who just walked in, was our caregiver. She just flew from Dallas. That's how much she cared about Dad to see this today. So she took care of Dad, and Dad loved her, you know. She goes, man, that gal really likes me. I think she's my girlfriend sometimes. But she really cared about Dad. She took care of him. She'd go in there and make him feel good and help him do stuff and clean his room and, you know, and really go all out. I mean, she even asked us, is it okay if I dust? I said, is it okay if you dust? Yeah. Well, Trina had to leave and go for a while, and we had the different people come in. It just never was the same. And I had to leave to work early one morning. I told Dad, just wait. Your caregiver will be here at 6:30. And he goes, oh, I'll be fine. I'll stay right here. And I said, Dad, you sure? And I had a lucid moment, so I thought it'd be okay. Well, when the caregiver got there, he was trying to cross reserve with his rocker at 6:30. It was winter. It's a couple blocks from the house, and he said he was going to dinner and dancing. So at that point, I realized I was over my head. I was so worried that he was going to walk out and somebody hit him, and you know, they not being happy about, you know, hurt the rest of their lives, ruin their lives, and I struggled with this. If it wasn't for my sister and my brother, I'm probably closer to her now than I've ever been, because I'd call her every living moment. All right, Glenda, what do you think about this? And I had to make these decisions, and I pretty much have made them, but I had to call my sister to make sure, and bounce it off her, make sure we're doing the right decision. They finally did move him into Heritage House. He'd been there a few times, and I was, so there's two hardest things I ever had to do. I had to take his driver's license away, and that was tough, because he liked to go. Second was put him in Heritage at the time, and I was just broke up, and I called my sister, and she flew up, and Don Gamble, I said, I can't do this alone. And so we took him over that night, and it was just heartbreaking. I just couldn't, he was up crying, going down the hall, and got him in his room, and I went home, and I felt just like a terrible son. I knew it was the right thing to do, because it was beyond me anymore. I drive a fuel truck there today, and I wasn't sleeping. So you all were at risk. You know? So I couldn't do it anymore. And I was heartbroken. So we went there the next morning. We heard Dad laughing. He's sitting at the table drinking coffee. There's girls sitting around him. He couldn't have been happier than anything. He had all this company now, you know, and that's kind of how it was. He was real good with the company there, and one of the reasons I picked Heritage, I would stop every morning on my way into work. I could visit them for an hour or so and make sure they were taken care of. I was I'm sure they were tired of me, and they were awesome. And girls there really treated him super there, and you know, so it was definitely the right decision. And he had companionship, and you know, he had people like Mike Frost over here would come visit him. Don Gamble would come get him every Wednesday and take him to lunch, without fail. Lee Island would visit, you know. Larry Horner, he was stable at the end of his life, and cared a lot about him. I don't know what I would have done without him, having those people help. It was been a lot. But Dad was ready. When he had a good moment, he would tell you, I need to go. He was a proud man. You know, he liked to have all his clothes dry cleaned and pressed, and it just wasn't, you know, he lost all his dignity, and he just didn't want it to be that way. And you know, you hear people dying of complications of Alzheimer's, like, well, what is that? I wondered what that was, you know. Well, it's what he had. He didn't, his body wouldn't swallow water right, or saliva right, and it would go in his lungs, and he'd get pneumonia. And this kept happening. This was before he passed. This happened 2 or 3 times in the hospital and out, and it was miserable, and it'd be worse each time when he come out. And that's finally what it was that took him. It was short, about 3 days, and love you, Dad. That's all I got to say.
I think I'm going to read Mitch's. It was so much better than mine. You know, before I get started, I would like to just say that Sandy and Mitch and Sheila, Shelley, and my sister, really nothing short of heroic in taking care of my dad through his illness. And boy, I sure love you for it, and I know Dad did too. So, anyways, get started. My middle name is Roger, Lee Roger Blades. When I was little, I thought everyone was named Roger Blades. There was Norma Roger Blades, Jerry Roger Blades, and of course, Daddy Roger Blades. One of my father's workmates, Lee Young, would call my dad for decades and ask for Daddy Roger Blades. Is Daddy Roger Blades home? And we always got a kick out of that. And I will say this, he always started those conversations off with a lot of laughter. And my father loved to laugh, especially at his own jokes. In fact, his brothers and sisters also loved to laugh, especially at their own jokes. I recall a time Mike Blades and I were upstairs at home in West Glacier playing with his brother Robert when we could hardly hear the music we were listening to. When Mike told me, he's like, man, when your dad and my dad are with Uncle Bill and Uncle Don, you can't hear much because of the laughter rumbling the walls. And it was true. If some have been quick to point out, that is something that Mitch and I have absolutely inherited. Yep. My girlfriend Chat once noted that I had a tendency to eat quite fast and in large bites. She told me I needed to slow down and enjoy my meals. And let's see here. She always, what's the rush? And she was right. But when I thought about it, I realized I got that from my dad. So one day, when Dad was visiting and we were having dinner, I mentioned to him, I said, Dad, I had picked up this habit of eating fast and in large bites from you. You always did that when I grew up. Why is that? And without skipping a beat, he said, well, son, that's because I was from a family of 13 and they cooked for 10. Rise and shine, daylight in the swamps.
Oh, man.
Dad, being a Navy man, loved the salutation, which always came way too early in the morning. I used to think to myself as the fog lifted, if I'd never had to hear that again. Well, truth be told, if I had that chance, I would, and I'd love to. But usually when he did that, the smell of bacon would waft in the room and coffee, and he'd get up and he'd look at you and he said, so how do you take your eggs this morning? So to be clear, I would love to have that opportunity one more time. Dad was an excellent storyteller. He would often regale me with stories of his Navy days. He would get into trouble aboard his ship, as Mitch was talking about, and always managed to come out on top. He especially looked fondly on his days stationed in Guam during the Korean War. He and his buddies bonded quite closely there, and it was a special time of his life as he started to grow into manhood. Actually, it was about 2 years ago to this day that Chad and I had the privilege to take my father out on San Francisco Bay. They have an annual Fleet Week air show, and I had gotten tickets on board the Jeremiah O'Brien, which is a World War II era merchant marine ship. And it was just a really lovely day. And Dad, I think, really had a lot of fun watching those airplanes and watching the show. He just loved things like that. A lot of other military guys on that boat, from World War II to Vietnam, Korea, to, the wars of today. People still serving, and every now and again they just walk by him and salute him. And he was wearing that hat right there, and he was getting a big kick out of that. And of course, this was a time when Alzheimer's had started to kick in, started to take Dad a little bit. And but it was right, he had his lucid moments. I remember we were going underneath the Golden Gate Bridge, and I looked over at Dad, and we were standing on the edge of the boat there, and it's just a beautiful sunset, and getting close to the end of the cruise. And I said to Dad, I said, you know, Dad, I'm really glad you came down here with Mom and left me down here. I said, I've just enjoyed being here my whole life. He's like, yeah, me too. I was glad to leave you as well. Worked out pretty good for both of us. In fact, this guy you have here, I remember when he first got that, and he came to visit me in San Francisco. And we were on Geary Street downtown. And he's like, hey, I want to show you something that I got from one of my brothers. Opens the truck and pulls that very gun out, and I'm like, Dad, maybe not a good idea here in San Francisco. Why? Well, anyways, I did get that call from Belinda and Mitch that Dad had passed. And I couldn't be there. I was working, and it literally had just happened. They were still with Dad in the room. And it was a heck of a time. I was at work, and I went for a walk through the city, and I retraced some steps that my dad and I took many years ago. When we first moved to San Francisco, we were actually on the peninsula living in San Bruno, and I had been begging my mom and my dad to take me to San Francisco. I wanted to see the big city. And so my dad acquiesced, and one evening we went to San Francisco, and we walked around the city, and he regaled me with stories of his Navy days when he was stationed there at Treasure Island. And he's like, well, I remember there was a bar over here, we'd go to, hang out there, and we'd get in trouble over here, and, just this wonderful thing. And I remember when I was walking that first night through town, I was blown away. I just fell in love with that city, and it's where I've been for the rest of my life, pretty much. So that night, I actually kind of retraced those steps. And it's interesting because it's been 30 years since he and I took that walk, and it was probably 30 years before that when he was taking those steps. But it was really lovely. I felt he was with me, and I was kind of inspired to write this song. And I was also inspired by my sister Belinda telling me to write a song. You will write a song. So I have, and hopefully I don't screw it up too much, but I think we're going to perform it now. I'm going to have Alyssa, my niece, and of course Mitch join me on guitar. And this one's for you, Daddy Roger Blades. Test 1, 2. Here. There we go. I think that's going to be good. So this is a song I call home.
son of an uncle, this great big world. And there's one thing that I know. This mountain where I grew up will always be my home. Son, I've come home. Come home.
Thank you, Manley. I'd like to now have Don Kimball come up. He has some memories to share about Dad. Don?
Got that tall enough, Mitch?
Yeah, I'll be back.
I'm kind of hard to hear, so I might be shouting a little bit too loud. If I do, let me know. Okay, how's that? Can everybody hear me all right?
Yeah.
Pretty hard act to follow, don't you think? Anyway, they always say that before you do any presentation, you should know your subject. I can guarantee you I know my subject, Roger Blades. I'll tell you, I'll be better than anybody. Roger and I, when we was younger, played basketball together, fished, hunted, did a lot of things, and he's actually my uncle by marriage, but I call him my brother, and we act like we were brothers. It's kind of ironic because I was an iron worker, he was an operator, and we go on the jobs, he'd be on the job running the crane, or rig, and I'd be on working on the bridge. So at night, we'd have to stop, and you know where we first stopped was, is Toddy. And so we did that for on me off and on many years. And I got elected business aide, or he got elected business aide for the union first, then I got elected. And so we still in the same old thing. We meet in different areas, and we have union problems and stuff like that, maybe damned. So same old thing when I was working. And then I'll be darned if he didn't get elected international rep, and so did I. And so it's kind of ironic, it's almost like it's meant to be. And so we crossed trails in Washington, D.C., Anchorage, Alaska, California, wherever it was. And we had a really good time. And you can guarantee, when you go into a building, you hear laughter. I'll guarantee you who was in the middle of it, Roger Blades. I can remember one time I went in this room here, and Roger was telling a joke. And pretty soon, he was laughing, and everybody was laughing, and I said, I didn't get the gist of the joke. Somebody said, well, we're not laughing at the joke, we're laughing at Roger. He's laughing so hard that he's laughing at his own joke, that's the way it always was. I tried to tell him the joke later, and nobody could get it. But I guess I should have been laughing. Anyway, we spent a lot of time on horseback, and he went to California on a job. When he came back, he moved back, and he lived with me for a while. And I look back now, I can see things kind of starting to happen. When you with somebody all the time, you don't really realize. Like leaving the coffee pot on without anything in it or something like that. I just thought just a normal thing. Well, anyway, I started making signs for the Indians over the other side. And I have to apologize, they can't be here today. But if you want to see Indians, give me and Larry Horner and Joe Blades a couple of shots of whiskey, we'll give you a show. They told us yesterday they'd be here and promised. It's kind of a high point of what. And anyway, I'll get to that. But anyway, he made these signs, and I got some pictures of it here. Larry helped me design them, and had Mike Frost, our friend Mike Frost, and Larry and I, of course, Roger went over there. And he's very attached to the Indian culture. And I know that at times he was very religious because he went to Nepal. But when he got up here, I don't know what happened. He didn't even talk about it anymore. But he got over there and we went through some of their ceremonies, and he says, I smoked a medicine pipe. He said, if I ever die, this is what I want, this is the way I want to go. He said, I don't need a minister or anything, I just need them to come over here. Well, they haven't, so they're going to have to put up with us today. Anyway, I have to tell you this, Roger saved my life once. He was up in the wilderness, and I had a real bad horse wreck. And if anybody been on horses, there's time or two you're going to have a wreck. Well, I had a bad one, I had a brain hemorrhage, and when I started going into convulsions, Roger usually searched the rescue radio, called the sheriff's office, and they sent a helicopter up in Benton. And so, just God saved me. I'm still here anyway. So he wasn't ready for me yet. I'm happy about that. Well, anyway, as time went on, I could see Roger starting to have some problems. When you're with somebody and you really think somebody, you love somebody, you don't really realize that. So consequently, he kept telling me, he says, Don, I'll tell you what, when I get so I can't take care of myself, he said, I want to go. I said, me too. And I said, you be the one to take care of me, because I'll be going first. He said, no, I think so. Well, thanks to Mitch and Sandy for taking me in up there. He was blessed to have Mitch and Sandy take care of him. And that's a job, it's not easy to do, take care of somebody. We know that. So anyway, as time went on, I'd take him up, take him to lunch every Wednesday. Him and another gal in their 90s, we'd take him to lunch to get him out of the house. And he'd tell me stories like Mitch was saying. He'd say, well, never got my check last night. And I said, what do you mean? So rather than argue with him, I'd say, well, I'd do something about it. I just don't go along with it because that's the way it works. And so anyway, Roger wanted to go. I could tell you a lot of stories, but I won't take the fist on that because some of them you don't want to hear. Right up here. Anyway, when Roger, I was with Roger to the last, and to steal a phrase out of the Bible, I walked through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for thou art with me. And I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Well, God bless you, Roger Briggs, you got your wish, you're there. Okay. So what I did, I put together stuff here, and I want everybody to have a copy. And this one here is about the edge of the rock. You've all heard about the rock? Okay. You will hear about it for today's over, because I'm going to tell you. I heard about it a lot of times. Every time we go fishing, he'd tell me about the rock. And I thought it was kind of an ugly rock. But as we get going along, the rock kind of got pretty. It was pretty. We went up the other day and we put a picture on here on the front page. And I want to read this to you because it's easier to read it than it is to say from memory. I want everybody to have a copy. And I made it out of poster paper. I made it big writing, double space. Most of the people I know is Roger. Most of the people I know is Roger. He's like me.
Did you use small words so they can read it?
Okay, but I think I can read this without my glasses. If when driving east on Highway 2 between mile markers 175 and 176, you will notice a large rock overlooking the Middle Fork of the Flathead River. And anyway, that rock is what we call Roger's Rock. It just didn't happen to be there. There is a story behind that everyone should know. During the big flood of 1964, a large portion of the highway was washed away and the contract was awarded to the general contractor to rebuild it. Of course, the project of this size required a lot of operators, and Roger Blades is one of them. He would later be elected business agent of the local unit that had jurisdiction of this project. Roger had a lot of experience running heavy equipment, especially big dozers. While working on this project, he was operating a D9 Cat, which was one of the biggest at the time. His boss told me that there was a big rock in the middle of the road that needed to be moved, and he wanted him to bury it. Roger said his boss told him to dig it up and bury it someplace. He said when he finally dug it up, it was too pretty to hide. And so he moved it to a place overlooking the river for all to see. Little did we know this would be a monument to his legacy. After Roger became sick, he was taken in by his son Mitch and Sandy. As this situation became more serious, it looked like his time was up. I contacted our friend Larry Brown, who is a shaman or medicine man in his own right on the Blackfeet Reservation. I asked him to come over and pray for Roger in the way they practice their culture, which has been practiced for countless generations. Roger has always been impressed with their culture and mentioned to me many times that he would someday like to have an Indian name. Our friend Larry Horner suggested that his name have some connection to the rock. When Larry Brown and his group came over, they stopped by the rock and chipped a small piece off it and brought it over and gave it to Roger and named him Fallen Rock, or in the Blackfeet language, Anisi Okatuk Sapi. That's his Indian name, Fallen Rock. This ceremony they performed was very touching and emotional, and one that you will never forget. After the ceremony, Roger suddenly became revitalized. Was this due to the prayers that the Indians and all of us had been doing for him, or was it due to the loving care of Mitch and Sandy? I believe this is all of what was done for him. One of Roger's last requests was that upon his passing, our friends from the other side of the mountain bring their drums and equipment over, and the Blackfeet perform their death ritual. Larry has promised me they would be honored to do this for him, and they consider him a brother. Well, they called today and said, kept doing it. So anyway, this will take place during the ceremony on October 7th, 2018. So whenever you drive Highway 2 East, and you see this rock between milepost 175 and 176, overlooking the river, take a moment and you'll know he is there. Little did he realize that he provided his own gravestone for a beautiful place in God's country, rather than in a cemetery where there would be very little visitation. That's where his ashes will be, and every time we drive by, we'll be reminded that this Roger Rock, and it is his legacy and his final resting place. God bless you, Roger Blades, the last of a generation of the Blades family. And everybody can have a copy of this when we get done here. I didn't put it out earlier because I wanted to hear from me. I wanted it to be my story. And if I know if everybody got it, they read it with me. Okay, then I have another one here. It's called Ode to Roger Blades. Showed his with buffalo. It's over on the reservation. And it was a problem. Larry Horner gave me that picture. I put it on there. And this year, I put this together. I'm not responsible for everything, but I put together what I thought was very fitting. And it says, Lord, can I have a moment with you? Just take a minute of your time. There's a thing or two I'd like to talk over with you. I know you won't mind. I have to admit that I ain't the best at the things I say and do. I've not taken the time to rightly honor you. I'm not asking this for myself, for I finally wrote out my string. I made a good living, do what I like best, running the big rigs all over the West. But it's for all the kids and their kids not yet born. It's a mighty long list of things I want them to have. I like them to feel the crispness of dawn and feel the cool and pure mountain air. See a mountain that touches the sky with snow that has never gone. Hear the bugle of an elk that pierces the air. Maybe you see a little fawn who would hide by not moving your hair. I like them to ride a good horse, lie by a campfire and have a good meal. Sit on a ridge top and see forever, drink rainwater, ice cold and clean. A sunrise that blinds your eye, a sunset that fills the wonder of the blue Montana sky. Things that we take for granted, that they'll not see without your help. Please, Lord, grant them the privilege to see it all for themselves. With friends and family now, I'm making my last stand and praying I'll be on a good horse. When I reach the promised land, you notice, of course, I ain't on my knees, but I feel you everywhere. Sure glad you took time to listen to this old cowboy's prayer. because I've had a good life, and I know it's my time. I have no regrets, for I paid all my dues and squared all my debts, and now it's time for me to go. Amen. An old Indian saying about a friend and a brother, you are here, that is good. You're not here, the goodness remains. So there's a copy of this for everybody too. Okay. Very good, very good, Tim.
I'm not wired to be standing up in front of a bunch of people, believe me. Dawn, can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Dawn and I have had this plan for the Crazy Dogs to be here. I've been doing the ceremonies with these people for 26 years, and it really hurt that they couldn't be here today, so on the way in here, it came to me that I had to do something for Roger. Roger and I've known Roger my whole life. I don't think you can be a horner to not know the blades or the blades not. So, but you know, about 5 years ago, Roger went with me to a sweat. And in that sweat, we became brothers. And he's been to numerous bundle openings, along with Mike and Donna. And I really became close to Roger. And I guess at a time, there's better things ahead than suffering, and I guess his time came. And I watched him suffer, and that wasn't good. But anyway, there's a song that the natives sing, and it's a sending song. It's a creator song. And it's for all your relatives that have gone ahead of you. And they're all sitting out here, and they're watching. And they're waiting for you to ask them for help. If life isn't going good, don't be afraid to ask, because they're there for you. The natives have a real belief in the four directions: Mother Earth in the south, the spirit of water from the west, the thunder spirit in the north, and the grandfather sun in the east. And I'm going to sing this song, and I had to make a living as a logger, so saying wasn't my fine point. I'm going to sing this, and if you guys can catch on to it, it's a little repetitious, but if you can, sing with me, that'd be great. We'll start with Mother Earth. Yo, hey, 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 yeah, yeah. Hey, hey, yeah, yeah, hey, hey, oh, hey, hey, oh, hey, hey, oh, hey, 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 yeah, yeah, oh, hey, hey, oh, hey, hey, oh, hey. Spirit of water from the west. Yo, hey, 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 yeah, yeah. Hey, hey, yeah, yeah, oh, hey, hey, oh, hey, oh, hey, hey, oh, hey, 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 yeah, yeah, oh, hey, hey, oh, hey, hey, oh, hey. Got thunder spirit to the north. Yo, hey, 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 yeah, hey, hey, yeah, hey, oh, hey, hey, oh, hey, hey, oh, hey, hey, oh, hey, 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 yeah, oh, hey, hey, oh, hey, hey, oh, hey. always love you.
That was beautiful. Thank you, Larry. Thank you, Don. Thank you, family, for joining in for this wonderful day. My dad, I can see him smiling ear to ear, being so tickled and thrilled with that moment, even more special than we imagined. If anybody would like to come up and say a few words about my dad, we'll spend that time now.
Hello, everybody. I'm Belinda Hooker. I'm not a Blades. Not a Cannon. Nothing to do with the Union. Back then I was a Republican. So, I fell in love with Roger Blades' daughter. Beautiful daughter, his cherished daughter. And my hair was almost to my shoulders. And I had to go to Roger Blades and ask him for her hand in marriage. For all the reason I mentioned earlier, that really wasn't his favorite thing. And I grew up in Boise, Idaho, and I went barefoot for most of my early life. And as I got older, I did not wear socks. I still never wear socks. Roger found that disgusting. So when I asked for Belinda's hand in marriage, he said, okay, but you're going to wear socks in that wedding. Bristled a little bit, but she's still beautiful, but it was worth it to me to wear socks. The day of the wedding, Roger must have checked my ankles 20 times, including standing at the top of this big, beautiful Cathedral of the Rockies. And I know that if I had socks on, he probably would have walked out of that big, beautiful church, which was about 3 blocks from their house. He probably would have just gone home. And the ceremony, I don't know if it would have gone on because I'm not sure she would have married me without him walking me down. Beautiful ceremony. I think a couple of you might even have been there. Well, obviously Mitch and Lee were there. Ceremony's over, we go back to the room, and there's a group of men standing around me. My brother, my father was a very distinguished man, Mitch and Lee, my groomsmen, my best man, my ushers, and guess what? When my father-in-law, Roger, walked into that room, there were only 2 people in that entire room with socks on. Every single one of my groomsmen, including my brother, Mitch, and Lee, were without socks. In honor of Roger Blades,
well, I might as well follow my dad. I'm going to keep my shoes on. I'm Don Day, or in Lee's parlance, Don Day Roger Blades. That's right. Before we came up here, I had to run a whole bunch of errands and had a busy day. I had to mow the lawn. I remember as a kid. Many of you probably have been to the property on West Glacier. Huge, I called it a golf course of the lawn, which made sense because it was on the golf course. And he would get his big riding lawnmower, one of his many toys out, and he showed me how to mow that lawn. And I loved it. The nice straight lines, and we would spend a month up there sometimes in the summer, so you get to mow it this way, and then you get to mow it that way, and then you diagonal. And so to this day, when I mow the lawn, I think of him. And I think of things that he handed down from that. A sense of order, a sense of pride in a job. I want to say one other thing. when I was little, he would say, Don, you are my favorite grandson. And I would look back at him and say, I'm your only grandson. But as he went on, Mitch and Sandy married. And he brought 2 very amazing daughters into that family. And he loved each and every one of those girls and boys in the next 2 generations. And you all are very much a part of our family.
I don't think I need a microphone. I am. My mother was Uncle Roger's older sister. And he was the only uncle on my mom's side that I got to know very well. And so he meant a lot to me. But I wanted you guys to know exactly why he means so much to me. And that is that my mom, like other members of the family, was troubled with alcoholism for the last few years of her life. And unfortunately, although I loved her dearly, it did impact our relationship. And after she passed and after my father passed, I said, I'm gonna go back out to Montana. And I'd only been here once as a child, so I did get to meet some of my other uncles, but I was only like 7 years old. I didn't remember them. Uncle Roger occasionally came to Illinois, and he came for my mom's funeral. And so about 92, I started coming back to Montana and got to know all my cousins and some of my aunts and some uncles that were still alive. I think Elvie was still alive at the time. And I'll never forget about the 3rd trip I made out here. It was a family reunion, and it was held on the lake at a church camp. And I was sitting somewhere, and I came toward Uncle Roger, and he was with Aunt Jewel, and he said, boy, I look at you, and you look just like your mom. It's like being around your mom, and years before that wouldn't have made me feel so good. But he took the time to tell me what my mom was like when she was young. And by the time he got done, I felt pretty darn good about what he said. And I felt real good about my mom, to learn what she had been like when she was young. And her life was different. And for whatever reason, I'm drawn to come here all the time. I've been here 4 times in the last 2 years, and when I heard Uncle Roger passed, I knew there was no doubt he was going to come back here and say goodbye. And one of the last visits we had with him, I think it was last summer, I was able to bring my son with me. He was an operating engineer. He loved talking with him. And he was lucid enough to talk about his time as an engineer. And Gail and I were sitting there with him, and we got a little emotional, and I said, Uncle Roger, I had hold of his hand, and he was holding our hands real tight, and I said, I just wish our moms, Aunt Jewel and Aunt Marie, would have known how much we love being together and how much I love coming here. And he said, oh, honey, she knows. So I wanted you guys to know, he really made a difference for me. He wasn't just a dear uncle, but he made a huge difference. And as I told you yesterday, he had a hug that made you feel like you were going to be safe forever. So Uncle Roger, I love you, and I'm so glad I could be here.
My name is Mike Frost, and I was privileged to be one of Roger's many friends. Met Roger through Don Gimble and Larry Horner. The last 5 years, we actually got to know each other pretty well. We would go up to these ceremonies at the Blackfeet Reservation, and Roger and I would drive ride with me. And he was a great person to ride with. He had plenty of jokes. He'd laugh at my stupid jokes. And we talked about a lot of things. We talked about family. And as a friend, you see a person through a different prism, a different lens than family, especially children, grandchildren see a person through. And you talk about things that many times family don't talk about. In the last several years, we would talk about the fact that we knew that the end of the trail was out there somewhere. We didn't know how far away, but we knew the end of the trail was coming. And that's just a part of life. It's the way of all living things, whether we like it or not. And it also caused us to realize how valuable life is. And as we have heard here today, people talked about his knowing that it was his time. And I was lucky enough to be able to visit with Roger pretty much up until the end. I live part-time in Seattle, and whenever I'm over here, we live here as well. I would have the privilege of joining the group for lunch and talking about a lot of different things, and sometimes giving him a ride back to where he was at. But you really get to know a person kind of by what they value in life. And Roger valued family, I think, above all else. He spoke about each and every one of you, some of whom I haven't met before. He was so proud of each and every one of you. And sometimes children don't hear that directly from their father or mother, but I want you all to know that that always came up in the conversations that we would have. How much he enjoyed going down to San Francisco not long ago to be with his son. He very much loves you all. He also loved his country. He was a veteran. We had lots of talks about that. And actually this morning when I got up, I said, you know what, in honor of Roger, I'm going to lower the flag to have Mass. So we lowered the flag and said a little prayer for Roger. Roger also valued friendship in a way that I think many of us never really get the opportunity to experience. And when I say friendship, he had friendship with so many different types of people, and he really valued his friendship with our American Indian friends, who unfortunately can't be here today. It wasn't that long ago, I think it was a couple of years ago, when Roger was really, we thought we were going to lose him. Yep. And his American Indian friends came over, and I have to say I'm kind of skeptical about these types of things, but they said a prayer for him, they did their chants, and I think they extended his life by a couple of years. We went up to the ceremony for the signing of the Buffalo Treaty with Larry Horner and Don Gimble. Went to the transfer of the Beaver Bundle, which is an incredible ceremony to see. And then the opening of the Beaver Bundle. All of these things we experienced together. And Roger, of course, did have an American Indian name, Fallen Rock. And the Highway Department, as I understand it, has agreed to put some signs up, watch for Fallen Rock. So every time we would go by, we of course would drive by the rock every time we would go up to the reservation, and we would always take note of it, and I'd hear that story again every time we would go by. And he, I think, approached that part of our life, the end of life, with dignity and with courage, which was something Roger was known for. He had a sense of justice. And when he was a representative, sometimes he would take on tasks that a lot of people didn't have the guts to do. But that was part of him. You know, whether we'll ever see Roger again or not is what our American Indian friends call the great mystery. I don't know whether we'll see him again. I'd like to. I guess we can just kind of decide on that. And since we don't know, I prefer to think of being able to see Roger again sometime, that he isn't really gone. He's kind of gone ahead to help make the road for the rest of us. He simply crossed the river and is resting in the shade on the other side. It was a privilege to have him as a friend. Rest in peace.
Thank you, Mike.
Anybody else like to get up? I'm not done yet. I got a little emotional, otherwise there's other things I want to talk about. Can you hear me all right? We used to have hunting one time up there, and of course we had a little sauce. And so we had a sleep bag laid out, and I put a log under Roger's sleep bag. And I thought it'd be kind of funny. So next morning, I asked him, how'd you sleep last night? He said, oh, that axe killed me. So evidently, I put his back out morning, so I didn't even mention it. Anyway, tell you something about Roger Blades. There's no secret. Women like Roger. There's no secret to that. So I asked this gal one day, I says, I got a question for you. I think Roger's kind of homely, and I don't know what the hell you're seeing. You know what she told me? He's very good looking, and he's charming. I said, I haven't found it, but I'm going to try to look for it. Anyway, I forgot to mention that, but I can tell you another one, but like I said, I took the fifth.
Thank you, Roger.
I'm Kurt Blades, and I'm really proud to have the last name of Blades. Major Wyndham Lee, see Rick in the back, Antona. I think the Blades name, I was very proud to have it growing up.
Amen.
And it's because it was given to me untarnished. Some great people. Might have had a few nicks and cuts in it, but it was tarnished. And I think it's great that we have a celebration of life for Roger, because he was a good time just waiting to happen. And so given the opportunity, and I think I told this story to Mitch and Belinda the other day at breakfast, and, but this is how I remember my Uncle Roger. And my dad liked to laugh. Roger liked to make him laugh. So we would go down to the house down in Mosquito Flats all the time, and the kids would go play and stuff. And when it was time to leave, they would call us up to the door. And Dad and Roger had never, ever quite finished. And they were telling stories back and forth as we were getting ready to leave. Pretty soon my dad would start laughing so hard he's crying all the time. That's how he laughed. He just laughed. He couldn't really speak. And Roger loved that, so he just kept on going. Pretty soon they were both telling the stories that you could just hear a squeak of noise come out. Those two knew what they were talking about. They couldn't speak anymore. And I think I've heard this over and over today, is that laughter is is how I remember Roger Blades, and just have wonderful memories of it. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. I think of my dad being Fallen Rock, and I don't think I'll ever pass a sign again. Thinking of my dad with laughter and love. Fallen Rock has risen, and I hope we get to enjoy a lot of laughter after the service today. We have a meal prepared, should share more stories and lots of laughter. At this time, I'd like to again announce Kara Jackson is going to play the closing piece, Amazing Grace. Thank you, everyone. Brothers and sisters are up there with their mom and dad having a great time. I say that we join their lovely reunion, and please join us for dinner next door. If there's not enough chairs, please feel free to grab and take them in or sit wherever you like. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh yeah. You got me.
I think we did him proud, Don.